listening to Season 7 of the podcast, Belonging to Blackness. I'm your host, Dr. India. Good people, welcome to another episode of the podcast, Belonging to Blackness. I'm your host, Dr. India. Today's guest is the embodiment of the popular sayings, walk it like I talk it, and not new to this, but true to this. Tonika Lewis Johnson is a deeply committed social justice artist and photographer, born and raised in Chicago's South Side neighborhood of Inglewood. Tonika combines art, photography, memory, maps, and multimedia storytelling to confront deeply entrenched racism, to articulate the vast disparities in housing conditions, infrastructure, and economic investment between Chicago's neighborhoods. Her two groundbreaking projects include: one, the Folded Map Project, which explores structural segregation across Chicago by mapping address twins and bringing residents from racially and economically different neighborhoods into the conversation. And then her project named Inequity for Sale, which exposes the history and legacy of mid-20th century predatory land sale contracts that ensnared Black families in unfair housing deals, undermining generational wealth and community stability. Tonika's work has been exhibited at Loyola University Museum of Art, the Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago, the National Public Housing Museum, the Chicago Cultural Center, and the Gordon Parks Foundation Gallery, among other venues. She gained early recognition when she was named a Chicagoan of the Year by Chicago Magazine for capturing Inglewood's everyday beauty to counter persistent negative media portrayals of Black neighborhoods as defined by violence and neglect. And yet more recently, Tonika was awarded the prestigious MacArthur Fellows Program Genius Grant in 2025 for her extraordinary creativity and social impact, particularly with her current initiative, Unblocked Inglewood, which reimagines neighborhood restoration as public art, restoring dignity, equity, and hope to families and long neglected blocks. Hope you're looking forward to diving into Tonika's journey and how her art reveals painful legacies of redlining, contract buying, and disinvestment, and the ways restoration, repair, and community care are vital acts of reparations and belonging. So Tonika, welcome.
Hi, thank you for that. Such a beautiful compilation of all of my stuff.
I love it. And you've done so much. And I think folks really need to know. If they don't know, they're about to know all about it. So I'm looking forward to having this platform where you get a moment to share your journey with our listeners. Are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
All right, let's get into it.
Give Black Alliance is proud to support the podcast Talking Journeys of Belonging to Blackness, hosted by India Lorick Wilmot. The podcast is an exploration of all aspects of our Black communities, including gifts of time, talent, and treasure, while shedding a positive light on the African-descendant experience globally. The Give Black Alliance informs, reforms, and transforms philanthropy to acknowledge and partner with our communities in order to bring about equitable change for all. To learn more about Give Black Alliance, visit us at giveblackalliance.org.
Act 1, Call to Adventure. So I've always remarked that much of what inspires us and gives us purpose is autobiographically rooted. Tonika, you grew up in Inglewood, Chicago, and still live there. What did home, community, and place mean to you as a child? And how have your childhood experiences shaped your current perspective of Chicago?
I love that question. Well, home is everything. And it took me doing all of my projects to my current one to realize that is the ultimate through line in all of my work. It's really about home, not only the city, but the physical home, the house, what it means to people, how it's been denied to people. My personal connection to home helped my work be as authentic and genuine about the importance of home as possible. It's primarily because, my story starts like so many of us in Chicago and other major cities across the country by way of the Great Migration. That was really about being displaced from home because of racism and terror and finding a new home. My grandmother's journey, like so many of us, brought her to Chicago to find and establish a new home. And what she created, what she established here was the foundation for me and my work. And I am deeply grateful for her sacrifices and the home that she helped build for me, my mother, even my father. My parents as a young couple lived in the house that she was able to have here in Chicago. My two uncles, who are more like my brothers growing up, my childhood was beautiful. And that really is the core of why it was important for me to help others understand that what they've been told about my neighborhood is not the full truth, because it excludes many experiences and lived experiences like the one that I had, which is beautiful, very typical childhood. Played outside every day. My first friend in life lived down the street, walked to school with my uncles, had a neighborhood bully, got made fun of for being a weirdo art kid. That's pretty universal. So me having that kind of childhood, I can look back now and see how it was really important for the kind of work that I would eventually do. And it's not to exclude the realities of what a neighborhood like mine that is dealing with systemic disinvestment goes through, but it really is to also say that, several things can be true at once. And we cannot just force one narrative and generalize a complete, huge, large, geographically large neighborhood. It's just not realistic. And that has horrible economic consequences when you do that. Yeah, I credit my amazing childhood to really being the foundation of the work that I do. And even my mother wanting to step out on her own and moving us to Chicago's North Side to get an experience of what that was like. I'm grateful for her doing that because it exposed me to the North Side of Chicago, which is economically and racially different from the neighborhood that I grew up in. But then also, returning back to Inglewood, my home neighborhood, after we had our little stint on the North Side. My work really is autobiographical. And I often tell people that my Folded Map project, even though it's multimedia, even though it's about systemic segregation and disinvestment, people's houses, it really is my life in a multimedia project. I would not have been able to come up with that project if I did not have the childhood and teenage experiences that I had in my neighborhood.
Right. So for you, what I'm hearing is home as community, home as people, home as relationship. I think sometimes perhaps in public discourse, that's like a taken for granted sort of appeal to the ways in which we think about life and living. But I think it's those soft moments, those culturally resonant experiences around the neighborhood bully, the walking to school or taking the bus, and the neighbor next door and playing outside and all these things. No matter if you're in an urban, suburban, or rural context, something about that experience is quite resonant, regardless of economic background, linguistic, what have you. And I'm sure for our global listeners too, there's still that sort of power in this notion around what does home really mean? What I think is interesting and I'm curious about from your experiences, at what point did you begin to see photography and art and multimedia as not just a tool for expressing what you're seeing and experiencing in your communities, but also as a tool for social justice?
What you're saying is so true. And this is why it's so critical to be exposed to art and culture art that comes from your own culture, but also others. Because I grew up in a household full of artists. My grandmother was an artist, even though she had a good old government job, like, older Black folks call it. She worked for the Social Security office. She was a singer and an illustrator. I don't know how many people know that about their grandmother, the other little interests and pursuits they have, but I was lucky enough to be exposed to mine. So I saw my grandmother as not only my grandmother and a woman, but an artist. She was singing around the house all the time. It would be nothing for me to go hop on my grandmother's bed and she would be drawing. And also my uncles. My grandmother purchased a 2-flat. And so they lived upstairs. We lived downstairs. And then when my grandmother wanted to have tenants, we would all live upstairs. So I literally was able to live with my uncles for long periods. And they were also illustrators, talented portrait illustrators. They drew so much around the house that I knew that one uncle, he liked to draw things that he thought of or imagined. The other uncle could replicate anything that he saw. He was more into realism. So even when he was a teenager, the pastors would commission him to, do the portrait. So I grew up with this. Okay. And my mom, she loved to write. She wrote poetry. She wrote screenplays, stories. She was always having meetings with her creative friends. They established Black Screenwriters Association because they would get together, have meetings, dissecting scripts, writing their own scripts. Wow. So when you grow up around artists, it's really like, okay, well, let me find which art medium I'm good at.
Right.
Tried singing. They encouraged that. I was like, yeah, I like doing it, but it's the people that can sing better than me. I don't think this is my thing. I loved music. I was in a house that loved music. This is how serious art was taken in my house. When I was serious about playing an instrument and I called myself being a singer and I was really interested in music, I told my grandmother and my mom that I wanted to learn how to play the piano. I got a piano. I'm not talking about a keyboard. I'm talking about an upright piano. Even to this day, at my grown big age, I think back to they bought a 7-year-old a piano.
But that's the level of investment that they were like, we're going to cultivate and curate this. So no matter where you land and where you want to go, that part of you is being fed.
I had a whole piano. And so what is funny is that I would play it. It was placed in the living room, and the living room was close to the window that was facing the street. And so when I would practice on my piano, the whole block would hear it. So it became like this community thing. Them making fun of me, like, stop playing the piano, come out and play, or, oh, you don't know that song yet. Or it turned into a community thing because piano is loud. I grew up with that household that encouraged the importance of art. It wasn't like they stressed you have to find a living at it. They just knew it was something that added value in your life. And if you're interested in it, we will, like you said, invest in it.
What was the pivot for you then, right? Because sometimes people perceive these particular creative outlets as such, as outlets. But for you, you have also pivoted and are utilizing it in terms of it also being a tool for social justice, right? And particularly photography and multimedia.
So it was a gradual, little lifelong process that prioritized my artistic passion. I was cultivated to believe that when you are lucky enough to know the art form that you're interested in, which at the age of 13 and 14 years old, photography, by way of a poetry writing class, because I eventually got interested in poetry and writing because I loved reading in books. And then the writing class introduced me to photography. So I was raised to believe that when you're lucky enough to find your passion, you pursue it and you make decisions according to that passion and interest. And so for me, it was educational decisions, and my family supported it. So I went to high school and got in an after school program that was called Young Chicago Authors. And that's the program that exposed me to a photography program, to the point where they had to remind me to write because I started taking photos too much and just wasn't even doing poetry. I was in that program all throughout high school. So making the decision to which college I was going to go to, that's when, for me, starting to think about, okay, how serious am I about the two things that I've been doing my whole entire high school years, which is writing and photography? Do I want to continue that? How serious am I about that? I was encouraged by my family and mentors that I had gained from other writing and journalism programs that I was in the summertime to pursue journalism, continue to take photos, but to build my portfolio on my own, but to get a degree in something that I was going to have to prove to people I could do. And so that decision led me to enroll in Columbia College and major in print journalism and use up all of my electives taking photography classes. But it was in those years at Columbia College in photography classes. And keep in mind, this is 97, 98, 99. This was still very analog. Unfortunately, journalism students were taught, if it bleeds, it leads. And that saying came out of journalism students understanding that there is a public good to be done in reporting news and information, but it is also a business. And so there's a difference between journalism and publishing.
Right.
And so advertisement is necessary. Who owns a media outlet? So learning all of those things, as well as taking photography classes, which showed me that in order for my interest in photography and what I was documenting, which was my surroundings, which was clearly urban Black neighborhoods, my friends, what I saw through my lens, I learned in photography class that sadly, if your work was going to be taken serious, you'd have to go oftentimes outside of the country to do a documentary series about life in another country or some other kind of issue. Never was it encouraged to focus on where you were. And so I quickly started to realize that documenting my neighborhood or Chicago was not prestigious enough to be considered as something worthwhile to document. That if you wanted to be a serious documentary photographer, you can't document anything local. Like, what's the value in that? I started to bump against feeling like that's not true. I didn't have the language to, or the knowing to really articulate how and why that was absurd. I just felt it. I just said, well, I don't care if there isn't a place for the photography that I want to take. I don't care if learning about my city and my neighborhood isn't important. I'm going to continue to read things and figure those things out. Me doing that for years, literally my early adulthood in my 20s and my 30s, is what I continued to do just as a hobby. And it wasn't until the 2016 presidential election year that I decided to pursue what would culminate all of those experiences into Folded Map Project, which was an idea that I had had since high school because I was commuting from my neighborhood to a predominantly white neighborhood for school. So it took well over 20-something years from the time of me getting a camera in my hand to going through college, pursuing photojournalism, choosing not to pursue photojournalism because you were going to have to cover crime. That was just it, especially as a new photographer. And I didn't want to be in a position to be sent back to my neighborhood to cover crime. And that was a very real possibility, being a photojournalist in the city that you grew up in. And I just said, I don't want to do it. You know, these are all the things that, looking back, I needed to experience and go through for me to create Folded Map at the age of 38. And I love saying that age to help other people and creatives know that as an artist, you cannot put a timestamp on when you should have done a creative project, because all of the experiences you have will eventually inform what will come to be your magnum opus. So Don't get caught up on age. But it took all of that time. So really, just within the past decade, is when the light switch went on. And I realized I can use all of my artistic skill sets to express my lifelong observations about segregation and ways we can heal and disrupt it. 2016 was the year.
Going to school around photographic journalism. That's interesting, right? Because that's another type of storytelling. For you, the kinds of things that they wanted you to focus on were quite antithetical to the kind of home and community that you yourself experienced. And then it comes off a bit exploitative before we had the lexicon of calling it like trauma porn.
Exactly.
I can see for you where when it comes to documenting and remembrance, how it might have been important for folks to not forget how some of these things harm people. Why is it important for you to tell stories in this particular way and to document history in this particular way?
Thank you for that question. And I would say it was primarily my interest in different forms of media. I learned very early on the value of print. I love to read, I love to write, but I also got exposed to amazing investigative journalists during my internship in college. And I realized that's what it requires. Their life was literally like a doctor. You're always on call. And then during fact checking, people change what they said and you had to show them, no, this is what you said. I saw behind the scenes of it. I said, oh, I do not have the temperament for this.
You're like, know thyself, and that's not it.
Listen, I said, because I'm getting mad and I'm just the intern doing the fact checking. What if I were the reporter? Oh, God, no. But what that particular internship also exposed me to was a central part to investigative journalism is data collection and how to visualize data. So they not only did these amazing investigative stories on race and poverty and politics in Chicago, they gathered the data and the information to visualize it for people on Chicago's map. And that was something transformational for me. So I learned early the value in pairing the written word with a visual. More than that, the importance of data and how to help people digest it by making it easier to understand. Photography, I absolutely loved. I knew the power of it. However, the gatekeeping that is also part of that industry as well, whether it's fine art or even photojournalism, I knew that it had confines and limits to the ways that I wanted to tell stories that I wanted to tell. I wanted to have more say-so in what I wanted to cover and what I wanted to share. So that obviously meant that, okay, journalism can't be the space where I do that because one, the goal is to not be biased, is to be objective. I had opinions. So I was like, I need to be an artist because I have things to say, specifically very biasedly. So I knew that I wanted to find a space where I could use all of the media I was interested in. I realized kind of the boundaries within each of these mediums that I was interested in. Like photography is amazing, but when you pair it with audio, it's even more powerful. When you're trying to show people something huge, like the systemic way in which segregation is built into the environment in Chicago, photography was not expansive enough. I knew it needed context. Photography is great at providing insight into a larger window of an issue. And I knew that I needed video even. And that is not the medium I'm most comfortable in. But I knew when I started to have Map Twins talking that photography wasn't enough. I'm losing something by not being able to see the body language, to hear what these people are talking about. And so I wanted people to have different levels of engagement with the issue. And it required several forms of media because each media form has its beauty and benefit. And so to tackle something like segregation, I was like, I need all of it. And so that is what set the foundation of me embracing multimedia. From there, it went into public installations, site-specific installations. And that's something that I would not have foreseen at all. But if I'm trying out different mediums, then this is also a very important one. Landmarks. All of the forms of engagement are important when you're trying to tackle a very large issue. And you really have to think about what you want your audience to take away from your work. What is the feeling you want them to have? And that will help inform the medium that's most important for you to use.
Act 2, The Road. All right, Tonika, I always ask my guests this question, and I'm interested to hear your response. How do you play?
How do I play? That's hilarious. I play by literally playing. I have a real live Pac-Man arcade game in my basement.
I love that.
Yes, I actually play my Pac-Man arcade game in my basement.
See, you showing your age when you say that.
And before that, I had bought an old school Nintendo plug and play because I wanted to play Tetris. I love Tetris. So I do that. And I love to experiment with different recipes. So I cook for play and relaxation, researching stuff. That's what I do for play. I research. Oh, do I research? I listen to lectures for play. I Google any question that comes to my mind. And it usually always relates back to a project I'm working on or some way to help my friends or my kids. So yeah, I just accepted the fact that I research for play. I love finding things out. That leads to, reading for play. Hang with my friends for play. They are my comedic reliefs.
So it seems like there are a lot of activities that you engage in that somehow feed some aspect of you.
And online shopping for play. Ooh, because that includes everything. Researching, because you got to look at everything. If it's a sale, if it's a deal, the measurements of the outfit, and then purchasing, envisioning what it could go with in your closet. Oh my gosh.
And I'm sure you're snacking while you're shopping. So then you get that food thing too. So, yeah. That's hilarious. I love that for you. Things that fortify us and the things that keep us going. I want to talk about your current project. It's a beautiful project, and I think it encapsulates what you were engaged in with both the Folded Map project and Inequity for Sale in many ways. Mm-hmm. So Unblocked Inglewood is a project that uses art as repair and reparations. Unblocked Inglewood transforms home repairs, murals, and beautification into acts of restoration and historical reckoning. So walk us through how the project works from identifying homes, working with the community, securing grants, to doing the actual work of rebuilding and beautifying.
I love the way that you described it as encapsulating previous projects, because that's the exact way that I view it in my body of work. It's the perfect bookend to all of my previous projects. And that is why it's important to look at an artist's body of work, because there is a lot people can learn when you don't look at just one specific project. The entire body of work can tell a story. And so I knew that I wanted to create a body of work that would be a story in and of itself, meaning that when I did Inequity for Sale, which was creating the landmarkers for just a small number of the large number of homes that were legally stolen from aspiring Black homeowners in the 50s and 60s in my neighborhood, I always had the nagging idea that I wanted to help people recover from this history, whether it could be direct investment in repairs or me finding out a way to purchase one of the former land sale contract homes and renovate it. I knew that I wanted a project that was going to address the historic harms that my previous projects were helping people understand and learn about. I really wanted to be the kind of visual artist that it wasn't only visual because of the medium I was operating in, but visual because I am helping you see something in a different way. I wanted to help people see alternative ways to healing, a project that will help visualize what healing could look like in the face of current administration, in the face of not getting formalized reparations. Healing still has to be a goal. And so how do you do it in the face of not having policies to support it? That's kind of what set the premise. It turned into Unblocked Inglewood. I was already in this space of wanting to not do another project about the historic harm. That is necessary. That is important. I think every artist should do some project in their body of work that addresses some historic issue. It is important to do. But I, being a social justice artist, I was like, okay, I'm at my wit's end. Like, we know the harm. Now, as an artist who's from this neighborhood, even I'm getting tired. I want to return to the essence of Folded Map, which was not only am I showing you segregation, but by bringing the map twins together, I'm showing you how you can individually disrupt it and what's required. You have to get to know other people. You have to go outside of your bubble. And that's on both sides of the map. And so the creative placemaking grant, the city of Chicago's Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, they offered to artists to do a project about history that uplifts history, that transform a place, the public art installation of some sort. And you could partner with a nonprofit organization to do it. And it was a large grant amount, $500,000. And typically as an artist, when you hear that amount, or the grantor is typically thinking a sculpture, a huge mural, some garden. And the reason I bring that up, and this is not to discredit thinking about these kind of very typical public art ideas, in order to establish what a budget should be, you have to think about, okay, well, how would an artist use it? And so they typically go towards what has been done, which was fine. But I wanted to push the boundary a bit and say, well, if I can prove in the application that homes, when beautified and with history around it, is public art, then I'm going to ask for this money to help repair the homes of the people who are descendants of land sale contract buyers connected to my previous project. And so that's what I did. I used the application to apply for the $500,000 in partnership with Chicago Bungalow Association, which was really important because to me, it embodied what cross-sector relationships look like and what it has to be in order to heal. As much as we would love to be able to heal on our own, you can't. This was an organization that had expertise in offering resources to homeowners, but could not offer the resources required repair dollars. We partnered and I used the application to prove that, homes are public art. Not only did I demonstrate it with my previous project that you all supported, the actual abandoned homes was the public art because of the history that I was able to give context. New Orleans, I think that city alone proves that, when houses are painted and beautiful, it is public art. And then also I referred to my big sister in art here, Amanda Williams, who literally did use abandoned homes as public art by painting them these beautiful colors, culturally specific colors to the Black community to bring attention to the demolition of homes in Black neighborhoods. We already know homes can be public art. And so now I want to use these public art dollars to do home repairs. The conceptual idea of redirecting public art dollars to actual home repair was what I was really excited about testing out, showing the creativity that's needed to do problem solving because of the people who were in position to determine if my project was going to get funded, forward thinking Black women, I wanted to be able to use that process to say systems are made by people, and the people who are in the systems is very important, because it doesn't matter how great my idea or application was. If it weren't for two specific commissioners who were Black women, who were progressive, who knew the value of home, if they didn't see the vision in that, it didn't matter how good my application, it could have been denied. I wanted the process of Unblocked to help people see the importance of cross-sector relationships, the importance of our municipal government systems, and supporting people who are trying to be operating in it, because it has to be together. And then also getting awarded, not the full 500, but 250,000 to get us started in doing some of the critical repairs to at least 12 of the 22 homes. But that was 3 years ago. And so we've been fundraising ever since. And we have been recently awarded $2 million to finish doing the repairs to all 22 homes, as well as the wish list renovations. We've been able to do public art on the block since 3 years ago. We have a short documentary about the first year and a half of the project. We can't wait on the system to give us the healing that we want. While we fight towards it, we have to innovate by showing, being a model, creating models or examples that could be uplifted in policy as we continue to fight for it. That is Unblocked Inglewood. It's what I'm going to be working on for the next few years. It's my absolute heart. Everyone on that block that we're doing repairs, they're all like 70 plus.
Wow.
The youngest homeowner is 50, and he acquired his building from his grandmother who passed. So I call this whole block my adopted grandparents, because I don't have any grandparents anymore. I love being able to help them in this way and honor my grandmother's journey and all of our ancestors who were part of the Great Migration. What I'm doing for these people who are someone's grandparents, we would have loved for someone to be able to do for our grandparents when they were facing so much overt systemic segregation that really prevented them from fulfilling a lot of the dreams that they wanted.
I want to hold space for Black women that just show up in spaces and amplify and uplift some of these kinds of projects. And so I think it's important, right? I mean, you're framing it as such that 4 Black women came through.
Yes, they did. Commissioner Aaron Harkey, who was over DCASE, the entity that provided the grant opportunity, and Chicago's first chief equity officer, Candace. If it weren't for them, this project would not have been approved.
So we got to hold space for the Black woman. I think also your strategy around looking to take the story of trauma and harm, systemic harm that played and impacted these Black communities, and redirect it into something that's more positive, flip it on its head to say, well, let's beautify. This community is equally as worthy and deserving as others. When I think about this concept of reparations, the reimaginations of reparations is part of the reclamation of home. What you're really talking about too is stability and dignity, preserving ownership, home ownership, and what it's meant for community healing and generational wealth. Even though in these neighborhoods, as you were saying, the people who are now able to benefit from this reimagination are folks who were probably young in the households when these homes were being illegally repossessed by the government. What does this look and feel like for these families involved? I'm sure there must be an element of pride and hope and just a moment of finally, yes, there's justice.
Oh my gosh. I'll put it to you this way. They tell me that if the project were to stop right now, they'd be happy with what has been done. They are so grateful for just the critical repairs. When I say critical, I'm not talking about anything cute and fancy. I'm talking about just electrical issues, plumbing issues, roof repair, things that you wouldn't be able to notice as repairs if you were driving down the street. That's what we've been able to do for 22 homes on the block. This isn't even getting close to the exterior repairs, like the facade of the brick or the porches that we've been able to do, the art on the block. They're just grateful for being able to have received the critical repairs. And the fact that It's been 3 years and we're continuing to make sure that we raise money to do additional repairs and wish list renovations. It's just something they're so grateful for, that they have become critical to the project's success. Them opening up their homes, sharing their stories. They say they're grateful to what we've done. I'm saying, well, I'm grateful to you, because if you were not willing to trust me and open up and share your story, we wouldn't have been able to do this together. I am grateful for them enduring all of the disinvestment, all of the issues, and remaining homeowners, because they are the engine of the neighborhood. If they decided to give up, then our homeownership rate would just go down to zero.
Wow.
This project for me is me kind of giving them their flowers. I could only hope to be the kind of homeowner that you are, weathering very real storms and staying here to be a Black homeowner despite all of what you have faced. You know, they just feel that love. They're protective of all of us in the project, helping them. They're so happy to learn about how a mural gets done and what artists think of. It really is also an intergenerational project. And they just, make me smile. They're really like family at this point. One of the landlords on the block, Miss Justine, she recently met my mom, and she was like, yeah, I had to tell her I'm Tonika's other mom, which she is, Miss Justine. Yeah, that's like my grandma. So I was like, I'm happy you finally met my mom. So it's that type of vibe.
That's beautiful, because in many ways, what you're saying is that the artwork is not just a static thing of it's a mural on a wall or a sculpture, but it is an evergreen evolution of community transformation. What are some of the challenges that you in particular, or the project, has encountered? What's then the long-term vision for communities and neighborhoods like the Inglewood one, where Unblocked is housed, in the next 5-10 years, when folks will move on in a myriad of different ways?
We faced a few barriers, but they've always transformed into really important, beautiful pivots. And so the goal of this project is to, one, stabilize this block. This particular block can be a template, a model of how this kind of cross-sector redirection of dollars can be used for community stabilization, period. Even though the repairs will come to an end, you can only add so much art on the block. Our goal is to create a report that documents not only the process of this project, what we were able to achieve, how it stabilized each individual home, but also to show new data, which is how much it costs to repair each kind of housing type on this block that is reflective of all of the South Side of Chicago, even Chicago, how much it costs to repair each specific housing type that has endured this systemic disinvestment for decades, and the kind of deferred maintenance that is the result of disinvestment. We want to be able to contribute to recognizing that in order to minimize the racial wealth gap and the gap in home ownership amongst races, that it can't just be about creating new homeowners in the Black community. It has to be about sustaining Black homeowners and introducing into the conversation and supporting what other organizations have been trying to get out, which is, new homeowners don't matter if the same rate you're losing homeowners, because home repair is an issue. Sustaining a home is a problem, and it can continue to prevent generational wealth if we don't address it. So up until this point, home ownership has not been a generational wealth building tool for Black people, even when you have a home to transfer over, because they're in neighborhoods that are disinvested, that can't get the same home repair loans, that won't get insurance claims because the value of the house is not high enough. So these are very real things that this project will be able to speak to. How a whole entire block of homeowners who have been homeowners for decades, how come they couldn't have repaired their home? That's a problem. If we care about home ownership being this generational wealth building tool, a way in which property taxes can contribute to the betterment of a neighborhood, then you can't eliminate this issue. It's huge. So we want this project to provide concrete information on how to help homeowners like the ones part of Unblock build some equity and get some repairs, and how that will reverberate out. At the end of this project, we will have created an entire block of homeowners who are stable, and that will ultimately increase the value of neighboring homes. It will also ensure that these homeowners will have money if the neighborhood did have an increase in property taxes, which that actually just happened, because we're offsetting what they were overspending with high electricity bills, having a roof that needs repair. Now you got bills that go up, gas, electricity, because of that. We have helped them offset that overspending to be able to afford an increase in property taxes. And people tend to think property taxes increases is horrible. Yeah, especially if you're already overspending on other stuff. Some people wouldn't mind paying more in property taxes if it meant they were going to have certain amenities. They hate not being able to afford it because of what they're already overspending on. Property tax increase wouldn't be as harmful and hurtful to Black homeowners in neighborhoods if they weren't being overcharged in other ways. We're looking forward for the project to be able to have a report that can speak to all these things, a reference point for people who advance policies that create financial products so that it could be more equitable. That is our hope and goal with Unblocked Inglewood. And I think we're on the path to achieving it.
I want to hold space for the fact that in 2025, you were named the MacArthur Genius Grant recipient. Which I think for folks who may not know is an enormous achievement, particularly in the sciences, social sciences, humanities, art, to be awarded and acknowledged for this particular recognition. So for you, how does such recognition impact your work? Not just personally, but in terms of visibility for Inglewood, for housing justice, and I think even broadly for art as activism.
Oh my gosh. So when I first started doing my art to uplift and change the narrative, public narrative of my neighborhood, if not change the narrative, help people learn how to question the narrative that they're hearing, which was all negative. And that kind of work started in 2016. So for almost 10 years later, to get this recognition, which is international to a certain extent, but definitely nationally recognized forever from this point forward. When people Google Inglewood, this will come up. A MacArthur Genius Fellow from Inglewood, work is about Inglewood, still lives in Inglewood. So forever I have contributed to the SEO of Inglewood online, and that does so much to helping educate about the narrative of my neighborhood. I really am so proud and happy that this is a huge leap forward for my neighborhood. If it weren't for everybody in this neighborhood supporting my artistic journey, opening their lives up to me to participate in my projects. They're projects now and people understand it, they can see it. But imagine explaining to someone, okay, I got this idea, getting people to agree to that. And they did. They saw it. They supported the vision. I owe them so much for supporting me in a way. And I feel like this is them getting their flowers too. Like, you all were right. You all saw something and all the weird little projects I wanted to do. And now look what you helped make happen. This award, this recognition that goes far beyond just my name. It really does uplift the neighborhood in a way that nothing else could have done. Forevermore, this recognition will be attached to this neighborhood.
Do you think it'll change the approach that you employ in the work?
It won't change the approach. It will enhance the access to new resources that I will be able to bring back to the work. people who might not have said yes for things might say yes now. I'll be able to, send them the link to the MacArthur Genius Fellow bio page instead of just my website. I'm excited to test the limits of what all of this recognition might bring. The actual dollars stabilize me in a way that I am not reliant upon grants of a project or income from presentations that I do to have a livelihood. So this level of stability opens up a new way of imagination.
Because now you're free.
Like I have been always wanting to create a real map, like a diorama of my neighborhood. And that was just a dream before. I don't have to wait for a grant. I could literally just call a company and start the process. That idea has been pushed in a file box in my mind for so long. The different level of imagination is what I am discovering. Right. I'm really thinking about a way to document the next 5 years that can contribute to the understanding and conversation about reparations.
Act 3, Where We Land. Tonika, I'd love to have you share with listeners any upcoming events, showcases, presentations that you have going on for you in terms of your art, or specifically related to Unblocked. If there's a particular website or social media handles, please give us all of the information so people could be in touch to support the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Well, this year, I will be planning for my first ever solo exhibit in Chicago with the Museum of Contemporary Photography that will open in 2027. So I'll be using this year to plan for that. And also, you can follow me on Instagram. I'll be doing a lot of engagements for this month for Black History Month, as well as in April for Fair Housing Month. So if you're interested in knowing about certain events that I'll be doing, you can follow me there. My handle is Tonika J, as well as tonikaj.com is my website to learn more about my projects. But I live on Instagram, so I would suggest you follow me there because I share updates about my projects and events that I'm either hosting or being part of. Hit me up on Instagram, and then, I'll try to tip my toe into the TikTok world. My daughter told me I got to really utilize that. My handle there, I think, is also Tonika J.
I love it. Well, I want to say, Tonika Lewis Johnson, thank you so much for sitting with us here on Belonging to Blackness and sharing with us a little bit about your journey. We appreciate you and congratulations.
Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others and be sure to subscribe. Find us on my website, www.indialoricwilmot.com. Follow us on IG and Facebook at belongingtoblackness_podcast for the latest fashion and accessories. Visit www.shopbelongingtoblackness.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.